according to promoter Eddie Hearn, the front runner for Kell Brook's next title defense for his IBF welterweight world title at the moment is Diego Chaves. Now we know that Eddie Hearn had been trying to secure a fight between Kell Brook and Brandon Rios, but that fight seems to be off. There was a big controversy about the gloves. Team Brook didn't want Brandon Rios to be able to wear his gloves of choice, which are the notorious Mexican Everlast MX gloves. And basically, Team Brook were acting like Team Mayweather, making all these demands and wear the A side and blah, 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 etc., etc. I'm sure it weren't quite as extreme as Mayweather or even a Klitschko, but it was along those type of lines. And that reason, and maybe because Brandon Rios was offered more money elsewhere, for those reasons, that fight didn't take place. Now, I think that Eddie Hearn at this point in time is the reason why certain fights are not getting made. That right there may be one of the examples of where Eddie Hearn should have got a fight made but didn't. One thing is clear and obvious, and that is that Eddie Hearn is not willing to take the kind of financial risks that someone like Frank Warren is willing to take in order to secure big name opponents. Eddie Hearn's just not willing to do that. For example, when Kell Brook fought Frankie Gavin in his last fight, that was obviously for Kell Brook's IBF world title. Frankie Gavin was actually offered more money to fight an IBF eliminator against Tim Bradley in the United States, a country which he's not from, for the same title. I mean, that's insane. Why would you get paid more for an eliminator for the IBF title than you would get paid for fighting for the actual IBF title itself? Something's not right there. Eddie Hearn is just not willing to, and that's just someone like Frankie Gavin, who's not really going to demand a lot of money. I mean, Frankie Gavin wouldn't have been getting an amazing amount of money for fighting Tim Bradley, but he was getting even less for fighting the champion himself rather than fighting an eliminator for the champion's belt. There is something seriously wrong there. And again, that just shows how Eddie Hearn is not willing to put his hands in his pocket and take a punt, as they say. He's just not willing to do it. He's relying heavily on this pay-per-view model, and he wants, obviously, Kell Brook to get a certain amount of money. And these opponents from overseas, he's not offering them attractive enough purses. He's just not. Particularly not when him and Brook are saying you can't wear these gloves, this, that, and the other. He's acting as though Kell Brook is some type of international superstar, which he isn't. Kell Brook is still a relatively unknown champion in international boxing terms. Yes, he had a good win against Sean Porter, but Sean Porter himself isn't that well known in the wider world of boxing. So Eddie Hearn and Brook really need to understand this, that Brook is not yet a star. And I guess in some ways they realize it, which is why they're constantly going for the Khan fight, because that would obviously be a huge fight, not only financially for Kell Brook, but also for Kell Brook's profile if he was able to beat an Amir Khan. But until he gets there, until he gets that type of fight, they need to be more reasonable with the way they're treating opponents and the way that Eddie Hearn and Team Brook are managing Brook's career. He's not yet made it in terms of being one of the big players. Okay, yes, nice win against Porter. Very credible win. But in terms of being a cash cow, no, Brook, you better get back in line and try and grind. And, you know, him and Eddie Hearn need to stop being so fixated on getting all this money and turning everything into a pay-per-view. There's no reason, as far as I'm concerned, for Kell Brook to be fighting on pay-per-view at all at this stage. He's not pay-per-view worthy. This guy don't have the following that Ricky Hatton had. He don't have the following that even Carl Froch had towards the end of his career. Why is this guy pay-per-view? To hell with being pay-per-view. Let's cut. I know, you know, I'm all for fighters getting a hell of a lot of money. I'm all for that. You understand what I'm saying? I'm not one of these people who says, why do fighters get this much money or blah, blah, blah. Or even the same that they say about a lot of different athletes. Why do footballers get this much money? I'm like, look, I'm happy they're getting that much money for doing a job they love. They're not hurting anyone. You don't have to pay and watch these things. Okay, it is optional at the end of the day. So I'm all for fighters getting a lot of money. But in terms of Kell Brook's career, I think that it's actually counterproductive to be trying to sell him as this pay-per-view star at this point in time. I think it's counterproductive. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I feel. And I feel that they're stagnating Brook's career by acting as though he's the superstar and as though these other fighters out there should be clamoring to fight him. Because right now, nobody wants to fight Kell Brook. Yes, he's dangerous. That's one of the reasons. But the other reason is they're just not offering people an attractive enough purse deal. They're just not. And they're making demands about what gloves people can wear. They don't want to hear that. Kell Brook is not Mayweather. He's not Manny Pacquiao. He's not even Amir Khan in terms of pulling power and profile. So they need to humble themselves, take a little bit less money, forget this pay-per-view stuff because pay-per-view limits your audience. Have Kell Brook fight without pay-per-view on Sky for a while in world title fights. If he's going to fight the likes of Frankie Gavin, Jojo Dan and these kind of guys, don't try and make these fights pay-per-view, people. Come on, Eddie Hearn. Fix up. And Kell Brook himself, you're going to have to stop being just be a little less money hungry at this stage. I know, like I say, I'm fully behind fighters making as much money as they can while they're still in boxing. But as I've just said, I think this is stagnating Brook's career. Where's he going to go from here? He's never going to get a Sean Porter or a Keith Thurman or any of these bigger names over to the UK with the kind of purses they're offering at the moment. So he's going to have to take a cut in money. You know, he's either going to have to take a cut in money to get one of them over, or he's going to have to go back over to the United States and challenge them on their own turf like he did the first time around. You know, the work, Kell Brook still got work to do, man. I'm telling you, if he wants to be one of the big players in terms of money and get these big fights made, he's still got work to do. He ain't made it yet. And him and Eddie Hearn need to realize that and realize they're actually going to have to go back into the fire again. And it's not going to come easy from now. I know that's what he promised Kell Brook, but I can't see it happening from now. And maybe Kell Brook will be one of the, another one of the British fighters, another one of the Eddie Hearn fighters to sign with Al Heyman. I think signing with Al Heyman would be the best thing that Kell Brook could do right now. I doubt it will happen. Maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt it will happen because apparently the relationship between Kell Brook and Eddie Hearn is very close. These guys are actually friends away from boxing. So Eddie Hearn might feel a bit, a bit slighted if Kell Brook was to go and sign with Al Heyman, because you look at James DeGale. James DeGale is 100% business focused. This guy certainly don't give a damn about no friendship or anything like that with his promoter. His promoter is just there to do a job for him. That's how he sees it. That's how he dealt with Frank Warren. That's how he dealt with Mick Hennessy. And that's how he's dealing with Eddie Hearn now. He sees these people not as friends, just as people that he's doing business with. You know, and to be honest with you, I think that's a good attitude to have from James DeGale. A lot of people talk about loyalty and all this other stuff. What loyalty is there in boxing when these promoters are making money off you? You don't have any loyalty towards someone. You don't have to have any loyalty towards someone who's making money from you. All right? They're making money from you. Okay, so people say, oh, well, this promoter's getting you the fights. Well, other promoters can get you the fights too. Why should you show loyalty to a certain promoter, you know, particularly when you're already a commodity when you come into the world of boxing, as James DeGale was, as an Olympic gold medalist? It's not like he's someone that was plucked from obscurity who only one promoter could do anything with. No. If it's a situation like that where there's a promoter that plucks you from obscurity, puts a hell of a lot of work into you, where other promoters turned you down, gives you opportunities where other guys didn't, and, you know, risks plenty because he likes you as a person or whatever, and builds you up and gets you big, in that situation, then maybe, yeah, you could say that there should be some type of loyalty as long as the fighter himself is not being exploited. But in a situation where you have these fighters who are already commodities when they come into the sport of boxing, they can go to any promoter and they're going to be able to get, you know, fights of a certain level or a profile of a certain level simply because of what they did in their amateur careers, winning gold medals and all this kind of stuff. Or because of the talent that they have anyway. No matter who they go with, they're still going to make a certain amount of noise. In that type of situation, forget about this loyalty stuff, right? The promoter sees this guy, Olympic gold medalist, I'm going to make money out of him. You know, it is what it is. So I like the attitude that James DeGale has in terms of just seeing the promoter as a guy who's doing a business transaction with and not having any real personal feelings for the guy. I like that about DeGale, you know. And if Kell Brook had that attitude towards Eddie Hearn, and I guess Eddie Hearn has put a certain amount of work in with Brook and stuck with him and what have you, maybe there is a justification for the loyalty there, but how far do you want to push this loyalty thing? It's like with Derek Chisora and Don Charles. Yeah, Derek Chisora was loyal to Don Charles, but loyal to a fault. Loyal to the point where it was actually negatively affecting his boxing career. And you only have a finite window as an athlete to actually achieve the best that you can achieve. So when is Kell Brook going to cross that line with Eddie Hearn? When he's going to have to say, you know what? If Eddie Hearn was loyal to me, he'd be getting me these fights. He'd be doing a better job and get me the fights that I want. I just think they both need to sit down and really assess what the hell's going on here. You know, reassess it, because Diego Chaves, and again, let me just close out this video. It's gone on a little bit longer than I wanted. Diego Chaves as an opponent, he's a decent opponent. Diego Chaves is no slouch. No one's ever beat this guy easily. He had a draw with Tim Bradley in a very competitive fight. A lot of people feel like he didn't deserve the draw, but at the very least, he was very competitive with Bradley. He certainly wasn't outclassed. He was very competitive with Keith Thurman when he fought him. Very competitive. He didn't just get blown out by Thurman. That was a competitive fight until Thurman stopped him at the end. And he was also beating Brandon Rios before he got disqualified. I think in the ninth round or 10th round, he got disqualified against Rios. He was winning that fight on I think on 2 of the judges or 3 of the judges' scorecards. So every time this guy has drawn or lost, which is only 3 times he's drawn or lost, or, you know, he was disqualified once and he was drew with Bradley, and obviously was stopped by Thurman. In all those fights, he was very competitive. So he's not any type of pushover. And if Kell Brook was able to destroy him and take him out in good fashion, I guess that would be a bit of a statement. I think that would be decent. But in terms of his name, it would have been better for Kell Brook's profile to beat a Brandon Rios, because Diego Chaves, although he is definitely at least as good as Rios, if not a bit better, you know, he's certainly on that type of level. He doesn't have Rios's profile. So beating a Diego Chaves, most casual boxing fans are going to be like, who's he? He is actually a pretty decent fighter, maybe a B-level fighter, just below the top guys, but he'll give most people a run for their money. And he's quite dangerous. He's a good counterpuncher, Diego Chaves. Quite a dangerous fighter. But we'll see what happens. Anyway, let me stop rambling on and let me know how you feel about everything I talked about in this video. It's happening, I'm out.